Hey guys, it's Mike again. Um, for those of you who don't know me, I have been studying Russian for about 5 or 6 years. I live in the United States and my native language is English. And this is another quick lesson from uh, Russian from an English perspective, what your Russian teacher may not be teaching you. Today we're going to talk a little bit about pronunciation, произношение, and how to improve your Russian pronunciation. And honestly, I've heard from foreigners, I've heard great things from a few of them, and some terrible things from many of them when it comes to actually pronouncing Russian words correctly. And the first thing is I want to give you the key, if you don't already have it, which is listening. It's not just listening once or twice, it's listening over and over and over again and very attentively. And that might sound like not a big deal, but I have, excuse me, I have listened to and watched plenty of people be dominated by what they think a word should sound like by the way that it's spelled. Um, so, for example, uh, one of the first words that people are taught when they're learning Russian is this word "здравствуйте." And there was one gentleman recently who I was trying to teach how to say that word, and he just couldn't do it. Здравствуйте. And no matter what, it just kept coming out very similar to that. And I think one of the problems is that people are initially often told that Russian is a phonetic language. Which, if you're going to argue that Russian is a phonetic language, I'm not going to argue against you. It is a phonetic language in that it sounds most of the time like it's written. However, there are lots and lots of exceptions to that, or times in which it just does not sound the way that it's written. So let's take this word здравствуйте. First of all, there are two v's or v's in that word, and the first one is completely silent. Zdrast. There's no, you don't say that first v at all, and then vuiche. That last t, what this gentleman that I was just referring to kept doing was emphasizing the che. Здравствуйте. And that's one other thing I wanted to mention is if you're struggling to pronounce something correctly, you're probably saying it wrong. You always want to remember that this is a language that people speak on a daily basis. So to them, it's simple. It comes out like butter. And I mean, it's smooth. And so if you're not saying it smoothly, then it's probably incorrect. So let's just take this word. The first V is silent, and then that last T is actually kind of soft. Здравствуйте. So just as easy as that. So it's not really a hard word. It just looks like it's difficult. But how do you actually get these things in your head to where you know when you say something or you hear something, whether it's basically right or whether it's basically wrong? And that is because you've heard the word so many times and you've internalized it in your brain that you just know immediately. Um, don't think so much about how the word is spelled. You don't want to find yourself thinking about all the various rules that there are for pronunciation. There are a lot of them. I'll go over a couple of them today, but more than that, in order to know where the stress lies, how certain vowels get reduced, how certain consonants are pronounced in that particular word, you want to rely upon your auditory memory knowing whether or not it's being said correctly. So if you're tempted to override what you hear, then that's wrong. You want to throw away how you think a word should sound and just repeat after a native speaker or someone who knows how to actually say a word. So that is one of the things that gets us thrown off a lot of times, which is, hey, I think it should sound this way because all the rules tell me it should sound this way, and this is the way it's spelled, and I'm told that Russian is a phonetic language. No, just throw all that away. And when you're listening, you want to be able to just toss out all of your preconceptions, like you're a child, essentially, and just listen and repeat exactly what you hear. So that is, I think, the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people who are learning Russian. All right, so let's talk about stress for just a little bit. There's one word that I'll use to illustrate this. A word can have a different meaning depending upon where the stress is in the word. And so this is an extremely important concept in Russian. You have to get the stress correct. So, for example, zamok means castle, or zamok, which means lock. Zamok or zamok. So, again, as you should already be aware, stress is extremely important. And you can see in this particular case, it changes the way the vowel O actually sounds. Zamok, the O in there actually sounds like a second softer or maybe a reduced A, zamok and zamok. So when the stress is on the O, that's when it's actually said as an O sound. Otherwise, it's a kind of an ah or an sound. So let's talk about vowel reduction a little bit more. So with this letter O, a great word to illustrate how it gets reduced. There are 3 O's in the word ha-ra-sho. Only the last O is said as an O. Now, if you were going to say it with all of the O's as O's, it would be ho-ro-sho, which we all know is wrong. Some people might say it that way, but that's not how it's typically said. Ha-ra-sho. So, if it's not stressed, it sounds like ah, harasho. Now, 2 other vowels that are often reduced would be ya and ye. Typically, they would sound like the letter E or something similar to, or maybe I. E or I those are the sounds that it actually takes. So, for example, the word pyat has a ya in it, and that's how ya typically sounds, as long as it's stressed. If it's unstressed, then it gets reduced to this E sound or I sound. So, for example, pidisyat. Pidisyat. The second ya sounds like ya, pidisyat. But the first one, instead of pyat, is pid. Pidisyat. And the word daliko. The E in the middle there, or the ye, is daliko. Daliko. Now, another example of how ya can sound different than ya is in the word nravitsa. So with these constructions where you have tsa, or it looks like tsya, that's typically just said and not tsya. Nravitsa, nravitsa, nravitsa. And also ya and ye have a second type of vowel reduction when they're not stressed. So for one example would be uchitil. So the il is not said like uchitiel, it's uchitil. And diesit is not disyat or disyat, it's diesit. So it sounds more like So it's the second vowel reduction for ya and ye. Okay, let's talk about some of the most difficult letters. There's always R or R. A lot of people, it's difficult to roll your R's. A lot of languages, Spanish, Hindi, I think they all are accustomed to rolling their R's, so it's no problem for them. Um, I would say even in Spanish that R's are rolled harder or longer than in Russian typically. Um, and for me, it did take a while to kind of get accustomed to being able to do that. And I found that just kind of practicing that sound, putting your tongue kind of towards the front and up on your upper palate, and just doing exercises and things like that seems to kind of help develop that muscle and the ease at which you're able to do it and your comfort in knowing that you can do it. Now, there was one word that I found particularly difficult to roll my R in, and that's pondrables. Pondrables. But I gradually learned there was a little bit of a trick, and that was to sort of add a D, but kind of, and then make the D less pronounced before the R. So pondrables, to put that N and the R together, that's what was difficult for me. So I just kind of stuck what I thought of as a letter D, pondrables, in the middle. And then as you get more used to it, you can kind of take out that harder sound of the letter D and just kind of form a D in your mouth, but don't actually say it. Pondrables, 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 pondrables. And pretty soon you're saying it with what sounds like it's being correct. So anyway, there are some tricks there, but mostly that's just practice. Okay, now the soft sign. This is one in which people will sometimes not even be sure if foreigners can hear it or say it. But the thing that you need to understand is that it really does change the sound of the letter that precedes the soft sign. So let's take the word очень. So if I were to say that without the soft sign on the end, which is what I hear a lot of foreigners saying, uh, очень, очень. There's no soft sign there, очень. But if I say it with the soft sign, then очень, очень, очень. And this also works very similarly with an L. Учитель, учитель. If I say it without the soft sign, that would be учитель, учитель versus учитель. So in English, one of the things you can kind of relate this to is the word oil. I found that if you say foil or oil, then that can kind of get you used to pronouncing what a soft sound would be like in Russian. Again, the most important thing is to listen to native speakers and how they're actually pronouncing the consonant that precedes the soft sign. But hopefully you're hearing it now. So again, without a soft sign, очень and учитель, очень and учитель. That's without the soft sign. With the soft sign, очень, очень, учитель, учитель. Okay, and then let's talk a little bit about this letter E. Again, everybody should have probably heard by now of this joke about, well, if you really want to say E correctly, then it's like getting punched in the stomach and saying E, but instead it's E, like that. And people will tend to overemphasize it. But this goes back to what I said earlier, in which you should not feel like you're stressing yourself out when you're trying to say a word. So you need to get to a place to where you can say the letter E without straining yourself or whatever. So what you want to think about is that E is kind of said high in the back of your throat. So your epiglottis or whatever it is back there actually kind of comes up. E, E, E. But if I say E, what's happening is that I'm kind of tensing up the back of my throat a little bit, so it feels like the sound is dropping slightly in the back of my throat. So, E, E. So it has nothing to do with my stomach, just the throat. So basically, once you learn how to get your throat involved in the sound just a little bit, which you're already used to because the letter H, for example, in English, will say it as like hotel, but in Russian it would be hotel. uh, or actually, the word is atil without it. But if we were to say it with Russian pronunciation, it kind of gets the throat involved a little bit. So it's very similar with the letter E. So instead of just saying E, you're throwing it back a little bit and down into your throat. E. So it's as simple as that, really. So instead of saying T and V and riba and lubimi, which all sounds terrible, then you say D, which is just a little bit back further into your throat. V, riba, lubimi, 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 lubimi. Okay, hopefully that is clear. And now we'll take the final pair of letters, and that's sh and sh. Sh and sh. Okay, so the first one is without the little tail on the end. It's a W, and so we'll take the word harasho. Harasho. And, oops, I lost it on my screen here for a second. All right. So the thing to think about here, and I'm not that much of a fan of when people are telling you where to put your tongue or how to make your mouth, because everybody's mouth functions slightly differently. Like some people whistle through their lips, some people whistle with their tongue. It's done a little bit differently for everybody. So, but I will give you a little bit of that with this particular letter, which I hope is helpful. But if it doesn't help you, then just find another way to do it. What's important is that you hear the sounds and you know the difference. So this one for me wasn't clear for quite a long time. Some people will say sh is sh or shhhh, shh, like that. And others will say that the sh sound is sch, something like that. But again, don't rely upon something that's written down. Rely upon your auditory memory. So let's go with harasho. When you say the letter sh, then what happens for me is my tongue kind of curls back and it goes up in my mouth. And my teeth are completely closed. Like that. Harasho. So that's the tongue is up. Now with sh, then what happens is the tongue kind of comes out and allows the air to just flow out, and it comes out even more quickly. So the word like ovashi, 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 harasho, ovashi, harasho, ovashi. So I do remember when I was in Russia, in Novosibirsk, taking Russian from native teachers, and I remember there was one woman who really said sh as sh. So the word произношение would be произношение, произношение, and would really emphasize that way of saying the letter sh. Right? So hopefully you guys can hear the difference. Like I'll say the word harasho correctly and then incorrectly. So there's harasho, which is correct. And then I could say harasho, which would be the wrong letter. Harasho, harasho. It's harasho. Okay, harasho. That's it for today. Hopefully, you guys have learned something. There's no way that I can cover all of Russian pronunciation, especially in a single video. So I just wanted to cover some of the things that are the most challenging and that I could actually give you some tips on. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.